My sister was dating this guy who decided to make his own feature film in my hometown of New Orleans, and it was very low budget, and I got to work on it because I worked for free and I was a stupid kid. And on the set, I really got interested in how things were all shot out of sequence and that things were created that really never happened. It was kind of like magic, and picked up pretty much everything I know. It's kind of like the D.W. Griffith period of my life. So I've been wanting to do some comedy stuff. I was kind of a class clown, and I found out that Super 8 was affordable in my budget. So I started shooting Super 8 films and kind of following the same process we had done on this low-budget feature film. Yeah, my first film, it was on Super 8. It was called Law and Order, or The Evils of Insomnia. It was starred me, and it's about a guy who wakes up in the middle of the night and notices the "Do Not Remove Under Penalty of Law" tag on his mattress, and unfortunately tears it off, gets busted. I think it was his third strike too. He's in California, and he's executed. And yeah, I had a big screening of it at my apartment, and everyone loved it. Actually, they laughed a lot more when I ran it backwards. Hey, that's even funnier backwards. Well, Mr. Bill, it's an old family business. It's been passed down father to son through. No, I'm sorry. I was looking for things that fit in my budget of films at the time, which was about $10. You know, the roll of Super 8, the photomat processing, and, well, Play-Doh. That was kind of the missing ingredient. I was a real fan of the early Popeye cartoons. The Fleischer animation was pretty much as good as any there was. But through the years, there were different incarnations of the Popeye cartoons, which with less and less and less movement. And I was thinking one day watching, God, there's so little movement here that eventually you'll be able to see the hands moving the character around, and maybe the hands would accidentally drop the character. All of a sudden, this character is a victim of his form of animation, and I took it from there. But all the films were lost for about 4 or 5 months. I sent them to have them sound striped on the film so I could add the audio. This was in 1973, and call the lab, no, we haven't received anything. Call back next week, call a month, nothing. So I kind of gave up on it. Like, I'd spent like a year making all these films, and then 6 months later, all of a sudden, the postman arrives with a big box from California Lab, and there were all the films, all striped. And so I put the sound on, and that was 1974. So I guess 1974 was the actual completion of the film. Oh, I'm Lauren's cousin. No, actually, I sent the films in. The first season of Saturday Night Live, they call it home movie contest. We'll pay, we'll play, no pay. And so I put a whole reel of my films together, one of which was Mr. Bill, and that's the one they picked out. And about a week after I sent them in, I called and said, "Did you get the films?" You know, I'm very nervous about people receiving stuff by mail. So I said, yeah, it's going to be on this Saturday. I said, which, the Mr. Bill show? I said, wow, that's great. Unfortunately, I found out that that Saturday night, it was around Mardi Gras time in New Orleans, and there was a Mardi Gras parade that preempted Saturday Night Live that Saturday. So I called up the NBC affiliate in New Orleans, and they let me come watch the live feed. So it was really on, you know. It was, the opening of it, it was the first time, so no one really knew what the gag was. And it's kind of got this wimpy opening where, it's like some little kid did this really dorky thing. And you could hear the groans in the audience, like, what are we watching this for? And then as soon as Mr. Hand says, oh, Spot's got to go now, and squishes him, I mean, there was, outbreak of laughter. Fortunately, they did rerun that episode that summer, and then everyone believed me. But anytime I tell them there'd be another one on, they'd never be on. It'd be because it was the last thing on the show, and it was used as kind of like an insurance buffer in case things were short or something. And that would be the first thing to go, because it's a lot easier to cut the film than to strike a set, and that was all prepared for. Actually, they didn't ask me to make more. They said, well, do you have any more of these? And I said, oh, sure. So I decided to scramble around and make another one, and they showed that one. And it turned out the first 3 seasons I contributed the films. Actually, one time I did ask if they could reimburse my expenses, and because I was up to about $100 a film at that point. And they didn't talk to me for like 6 months. So I said, well, maybe I won't ask them that. So I just kept making them, and they kept playing them. So I had about 6 or 7 of Mr. Bill's on the first 3 seasons, and it kept getting more and more popular. I'd moved to New York at this point. I moved to '76. I did stand up at the Improv in New York and the various clubs. Sold popcorn to make a movie theater. Just did whatever I could just to barely hold on in New York. Kept making a few more films, and it kept building up the popularity. And I finally got a call from Lorne Michaels, and I guess one of his friend's sons wrote "Here Comes Mr. Bill's Dog" on the bathroom in his school and got expelled. And so Lorne figured, well, that's a good sign. It's like this is making an impact. And near the end of the 3rd season, I met with Lorne, and he said, I want you to make 10 films next year, and I'll give you a budget to do that. And I said, and you trust me to do this? And he says, no, but if it works, you'll be a hero and I'll be a hero. So we shook hands, and decided to put everything into it to make sure it did work. And I wound up making 10 the 4th season and 10 the 5th season. And so to this day, Mr. Bill's the most frequently used character on the show. Yeah, I really didn't have the time to be nervous. It was just a total full-time job. Well, in addition to that, so the 4th season began, and I had my contract to do 10 Mr. Bill films, and I was really, really styling then. And I asked Lorne, well, I'd like to try to do other things too. And I showed him a reel of my other films, and so he invited me to try out as a writer before the 4th season. And early on, the writers would write commercial parodies, the film parodies, because those took some pre-production time. So that was like the first thing. So he invited me to try to write some commercial parodies. And so I wrote this, it was a concert for Elvis Presley's coat. It was just a coat in concert. It was about a year after he died during the Elvis craze. So I was there at the writer's office that night, and Lorne went through the stack of things, and he was reading them to himself, and then he said, Elvis is a definite. So later that night, everyone was going to leave in the building, and Lorne was kind of waiting up front, and I caught up. I said, well, if you still want that writer's position, I've talked to some people. I said, yes. So he got in his limousine. I went down the subway chute, and I was kicking my heels. And so all of a sudden, I had 2 jobs. Well, the day job at Saturday Night Live wasn't really a day job. It kind of got later and later over the course of the year. So pretty soon people would spend all night there and writing for the Wednesday read-through. That was the big day. So pretty soon you'd spend all night Tuesday night up to read-through. But when I wasn't there, I'd have to go home to my little studio cubbyhole and build the sets and do the Mr. Bill films and try to keep both going. So I took it on, but once again, I get myself in the jams, and that's, otherwise, if you figure all this stuff out in advance, I'm not going to do that. I'll go to med school. That'd be a lot easier. Right? When I made the Mr. Bill films for Saturday night, I could see the audience reaction. It was really my education in filmmaking. I got to make so many of them. In each one, I would learn from the reaction. Maybe I should try something next time. The thing about that group of people, and I definitely tribute Lorne with this, is that he hired people that were very nice and got along, and all the craziness you would think that would happen in the original 5 years. And I'm sure there was. I'm sure I missed out on some of it, but generally they were very, very friendly, nice people. I think Lorne, that was a key to him deciding, because he wanted a group that was going to be spending a lot of time together and cared for each other. And Bill Murray, first time I was on staff, he sat down with me, welcomed me to the show, and it was a real family thing, which I actually missed quite a bit. The first show I did, the Rolling Stones were the hosts, and I got to be on stage with a bayonet against Keith Richards' neck, and he was like smoking. That's cool, man. That's a great job, So I remember Belushi. He had me pinned to the floor one day at the offices saying, do the voice. I didn't do it. So no one's been able to get me to do the voice in public, because it's much too silly. And we had people like Monty Python, Michael Palin, like the coolest guy around, was host. All these people. And one of the jobs I had on Saturday Night Live is I wrote the little promos that the hosts would do for the show coming up. Join us this week, and so I got to write those and work directly with all the various hosts that were on, and that was terrific. No, I mean I'm jaded. I mean it was my first job, and it's hard to really look to match that. But I give my props to Lorne. He gave me the break, and a lot of other people saw the films and were, they just didn't know what to think of it. He put it on, so. I like Mr. Bill Builds a House. That's when I moved into 16 millimeter film, which is pretty advanced. Mr. Bill Goes to Court was a good one. Mr. Bill Goes to New York. I don't know. They're all kind of a blur, but I would say, Mr. Bill Builds a House, Mr. Bill Goes to Court, Mr. Bill Goes to Circus kind of stick out. After the fifth season, or near the end of the fifth season, Lorne Michaels decided to call it quits. It was a good time to just everyone go away. And at that time, the show was in its highest ratings of all time, even to this day. It was the fifth season, and Mr. Bill was probably at the height of its popularity. It was on almost every week to 2 weeks. So it reached this kind of point where, at a high point, where often most things kind of go beyond that, and they start becoming like everything else, and all the merchandising and everything. So that never really happened, and I've been protective about it. So I think all the good feelings were left intact. When people find out I do Mr. Bill, well, now they know because I'm on camera, but at a party or something, if it comes up, I find nothing but fondness of the memories versus, oh yeah, I remember that, but then it got like everything else and fizzled out. So I think Lorne's decision to end the show at that point and everyone leaving and Mr. Bill being at its peak, it's probably the best thing that could have happened, really. I think Mr. Bill is popular because we live in a very sick society, and good luck for me. I didn't realize it was just funny to me. I don't know. I'm probably the last to explain it. Any film I've made, it's just if it's funny to me, I've never aimed at an audience or tried to please a certain group or followed a trend or anything. I've just stuck to if it's funny to me, then if I can preserve that idea through the whole process of filmmaking, then in theory it will be funny to the audience at the end. That's my best shot. And the hard thing is keeping the confidence and throughout the process that it's still funny, because it starts to get old. The joke gets old when you're working on this for a while. But I realized early on, though, that if you just persevere, carry out the plan, that's your best shot, because if you can preserve what made you laugh initially and get it all the way to the audience, then you got a shot at appealing to them. And that's how I approached every film, and that's how I approach everything I do still. I really don't fashion Mr. Bill's predicaments off my own life. I've really never lost an arm or a leg. Well, a couple of business transactions maybe, but no, it's maybe my childhood. I think the biggest influence of Mr. Bill was probably the Kennedy assassination and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Abe Zapruder was probably one of my mentor filmmakers. How he lined that telephone pole up with the thing. It's like I really can't delve too deeply into it. It'd be very expensive to try to hash this out. I think I went to a therapist for something one time, and the Mr. Bill, we're not going there. I'm not buying you a new BMW. Since Saturday Night Live, I've been writing and directing a lot of films for television, shows like The Tonight Show, and a lot of shows that, the best of the worst, with Greg Kinnear's first show. So I've been just trying to get rid of the Plato director typecasting, so that I can mutilate and destroy real humans and stuff like that. I hope to do feature films. I do animation. I do DVD authoring, and I just finished a documentary on my hometown, New Orleans. It's called New Orleans: The Natural History. And I'm moving into the education market, and I think Mr. Bill has a future as a children's educational interactive DVD character by searching off all the libraries of existing educational information and using Mr. Bill as a fun kind of character to tie it together. I think, I mean, movie making is really hard. I mean, it's like going to war. So I figure if I'm going to go to trouble making a movie, I'd like to have something that's going to last a while and have some positive residual effect. And I think the education market, it's new. The interactive DVD market, it's hasn't quite happened yet. But I want to be in the beginning of it. And I've been using all my experience for filmmaking and technology. I have an early adapter of computers and digital format. Very similar to the early days of Super 8. You know, I had the camera, I could buy the film, I could edit it and make a movie. And the standards back then, if people could make it out, then that was good enough. But digital technology is advanced, that I own my own equipment. It's very similar in the fact that I don't have to go raise gigantic amounts of money for post-production. I don't have to convince someone, because you know, if I'd gone out and tried to sell the Mr. Bill idea in the first place, they would have called security on me. But I had the ability, because it was cheap, and I had the camera and the idea to do it. And I look at my career, I don't totally want to be independent, but it's preferable than sitting around waiting for someone else to make a decision. As long as the technology exists and I have an idea and I can keep making it, that's what I think I'll continue doing. Christian children's singer, Mr. Bill, not. I'm more of a Nietzsche. If there's a Nietzsche singer, maybe Mr. Bill, but no, that's not me. No, Mr. Bill's poultry market is not mine either. I'm very concerned about salmonella and injuring people, so I would not sell poultry. Mr. Bill's vertical adventure, it sounds too dangerous for me. I would no, something safer, you know, horizontal adventures like lying down, maybe. Mr. Bill's bass and custom worms, no, I would have never thought of that, actually. So, no, I didn't do that. I don't think Mr. Bill will ever get revenge. He gets no kick from revenge. He's just trying to get through life with not too many bad things happening to him and avoiding things. And actually, if everyone were a little more like that, we might be in a better situation. But no, there's really no bitterness in Mr. Bill. He just wants to kind of just try to have a nice, normal life like everyone. If you call this normal these days. I rarely laugh at television today. The sitcoms I can't watch. Since Green Acres, I haven't really watched the sitcoms, so I'm not really an authority on this, but I do love The Simpsons. Simpsons are always good. And I love Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. In fact, when I moved to New York in '76 and worked at the Improv, Larry David was one of the headliners back then, and along with Andy Kaufman and a bunch of those people. But not a lot of comedy on television that I really like, because most of it is filtered through a layer of executives which didn't exist back in the early days of television. I mean, I mentioned Green Acres because it was a funny show. But back then, they basically let the creator do what they wanted, and it was either worked or it didn't, but it was something genuine from somebody's point of view. But over the years, there's a new level of executive administration that all want to make sure that the thing is really funny. So they're all kind of, but this doesn't work. I mean, you either have to have a single person's vision that made them laugh, or a really tight-knit collective group like Monty Python or Second City that were so in sync, who can take it through. But to make someone laugh, you got to surprise them. You cannot bully them into laughing. And so sitcoms and stuff on television, and maybe there's some great stuff, but I just don't have the time. I'd rather stare at the wall, really, and make myself laugh. Who knows where creativity comes from? Actually, my whole career is about getting myself into a jam and working my way out. I take on these ambitious things, and because I'm pretty naive going in, so I get myself in the middle of a project, and then I've got to figure out how to get out. And so they're all kind of experiments. I mean, I never have it all totally have a concept, but then I think the key is just engaging and getting started, and having the confidence. Once you make a few more of these, you can rely on past experience and say, okay, I've been here before. But then I come up with some bigger mess to get myself into. Yeah, kids, don't try this. This is very dangerous. Get a straight job or go to med school. I really think you'd be better off. But no, hey, if you got an idea and you've got the means to do it these days, with camcorders, there's really no excuse anymore. If you got an idea, you really do have the ability to make it. So I'd say go for it. All the cable channels and video distribution. It's a great time to be in this kind of communications business. When I started, there were only 3 opportunities to get on television. It was ABC, CBS, or NBC, and I crawled in a crack in a back window and got in somehow. And when I started, I tell people I'm going to make comedy films. I say, yeah, but you're not even funny. I said, well, I know, but I just want to do this, So I had the means to make the films, and I see parallels today that I would encourage anyone to try it and see if you'll know pretty soon. My first film, I got great reactions. I was kind of hooked, and so the key is doing it and not thinking about it. Just take a stab and jump in and see what happens. Yeah, I'm really pleased to finally have the whole collection together in one place. Mr. Bill has done things through the years, and it's been a real great experience for me. I've been able to do computer animation with Mr. Bill. I did 40 new episodes for Fox Family Channel, various commercials for Lexus, and believe it or not, Mr. Bill for Lexus. And they called me, oh, sure. I was like, I didn't get one out of it, but he's been a great thing to expose me to a lot of different situations, and I'm really pleased to have them all together. One of my big projects the last 5 years is getting the films out of the vaults, rescanning them to high definition, authoring the DVDs, which I do myself. I do all the authoring, the menus, and so forth. And this final disc and putting them all together into my life in three discs in a nice hand-sized thing is kind of a feeling of closure for me. And I think I can kind of move on knowing that they're not just sitting in a vault somewhere and people can hopefully enjoy them or hate them or whatever, but they're out there. Mr. Bill's gone back to the reunion shows, like the 25th anniversary, 15th. Yeah, there may be a spot for Mr. Bill on Saturday Night Live someday. There may be the right time, the right moment. I don't know. I'm listed in the phone book. So Walter Williams has a lot of them. So be prepared to call a lot. It's fun. I'm probably the only creator that still owns the character they created. Charles Schulz didn't own Peanuts, and it has its pluses and minuses. But I have no big grand agenda or deadlines, and it's stuff that I think kind of connects with Mr. Bill, and that's how I make the decisions of where he shows up next. But he's kind of like a virus. It's hard to shake. He'll be around for quite a while. I'm amazed, to get on a show like that, and whatever effect it's had on society or influence. I'm sorry.